Japan is furious. Japan feels abandoned by Donald Trump. Japan feels that Donald Trump is being consistently outmaneuvered by Xi Jinping. Japan feels that Donald Trump and this regime doesn't have their back, that Trump just fawns over Xi Jinping and does whatever Xi Jinping wants. He gives Xi Jinping in China America's, most highly classified, top of the line AI H200 chips. And then Xi Jinping responds, thank you, I'll take some of those chips, but I still want to protect Huawei and some of our internal businesses. But thank you for basically nothing in return. And Trump doesn't realize he's getting played. And, Japan's also pissed that when China's top ambassadors are saying they want to cut off the head and behead Japan Prime Minister Takaishi, that the United States basically wasn't doing anything. Finally, the United States sent a plane over on Thursday, a B-52, to say, all right, Japan, we hear you. But it took weeks and weeks and weeks and Japan building up its military before the United States did anything at all. So let me just go through some of the things that went down. So you had Japan a few weeks back said, look, if China invades Taiwan, we may have to act to protect Taiwan. To which China said, whoa, 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 are you threatening China by saying that you're going to protect Taiwan if we invade? And then Xi Jinping called up Trump and said, you got to tell your friend Prime Minister Takaishi to shut up and watch her mouth. She can't say things like that to China. And Prime Minister Takaishi thought that Donald Trump was going to have her back because you would think it would be the United States position that we're going to protect Taiwan, even with strategic ambiguity, but we're still going to protect Taiwan. But Trump basically called Prime Minister Takaishi and told her that you and Japan need to be quiet. Stop saying these things about China. And then Japan immediately started building up its military because okay, I guess we got to protect ourselves right now. We heard from Japan's defense minister over the past weeks. And then China started doing things like locking onto Japan airplanes in Japanese airplane space with the Chinese radars. And so then Japan issued formal complaints and saying, wait, you're locking onto our planes like you're going to shoot them down. Japan expressed concern after China deployed over 100 vessels across the East Asian waters just in the past week, the largest maritime show of force to date by China. And the Japan defense minister also lodged complaints about China locking on to the radar systems of the Japanese fighter jets. You have Japanese fighter jets scrambling to monitor Chinese and Russian Air Force joint patrols right off its coast. And the United States remained mostly silent. In fact, what the U.S. did recently, as Japan was telling NATO, hey, you got to do something. Now we learn that the U.S. is working on its own secret plan with Russia and China to create a counter to the G7 and to NATO, which Trump considers to be like his nuclear five. And maybe Japan would be in it, maybe not, but it would be led by Russia, China, and US. And notably, you wouldn't have the UK and France in there. And all the while, Donald Trump's giving China everything they want. I mean, anytime Xi Jinping calls China, it seems like we're giving. And China hasn't even made good on any of the things that Trump said they were going to do. Like, they shut down buying our soybeans. In 2024, they bought 27 million metric tons of soybeans. This year, even after Trump said, all right, we talked, we're cool. Maybe at the most, it's 5 million metric tons. Some people say it's closer to 1 million metric tons of soybeans. In any event, it's like 20 million metric tons less than under former President Biden that was being bought. And they still in China have their export controls over their rare earth elements. Companies in the United States that have any affiliation with the military will still struggle to get some of those rare earths unless they basically beg China. And then when Donald Trump says, all right, G, what do you want? We want the H200 AI chips that NVIDIA is doing. Trump's like, all right, we'll give it to you. And then rather than say thank you even, Xi Jinping's like, okay, we'll take some of them, but we got to protect Huawei and our internal businesses. So we're just going to take your technology and give it to Huawei so they can accelerate their program quicker. Just this is all going on. I think it's not getting any attention that it deserves. And you have lots of countries, in that are kind of developing a war footing. Oh, I should mention too, that you had Prime Minister Modi, just if we're talking about this general region, meeting with Putin recently as well. Delighted to welcome my friend, President Putin, to India. Looking forward to our interactions later this evening and tomorrow. And so as the United States has isolated itself, screwed over our traditional allies in Europe, who I don't even think are allies anymore after what Trump did to them, put out a national security strategy that basically attacks European sovereignty and says that basically we're doing regime change in Europe and that it's part of the sphere of influence of Russia. You have all these other countries meeting with each other at the expense of the U.S., who's getting much weaker. I want to bring in Democratic Congresswoman and the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs South and Central Asia Subcommittee, Sydney Kamlager-Dove. We had you on recently to talk about another issue, but then afterwards, you and I started talking about what's happening in Asia, because these are massive seismic changes that are happening in the past few weeks. In the past 48 hours, there's massive shifts, and really it's not getting enough coverage anywhere. So I wanted to toss it to you to talk to us about what's going on after that intro.
Oh my God, Ben, what an amazing intro and tutorial it was. I just want to say that this is all about world domination, and you have so many superpowers around the world who are battling to control the world. And right now you control the world when you control the computers, when you are making the most powerful and technologically advanced chips and computers around, you are able to control the world, because you're able to control defense, you're able to control like how things get designed, and you can probably control like how people's votes get counted. And so what you're seeing is, there used to be a time when we were trying to play nice with different parts of the world in order to keep the peace. And now you have a president who is getting in bed with some of our biggest, strongest adversaries and making them even stronger. So you talked about these chips, and we're not talking about nacho chips. We're not talking about potato chips. We are talking about the most advanced computing chips around. So data centers. So think about the movie Mission Impossible, right? In every single movie, you know, Tom Cruise is supposed to go to that mega computer hub and do something to save the world, because that computer has maybe been hacked, or some of the chips in it that are making it work have been taken over by the super baddies. So what's happening now is that Trump is actually selling those chips to the super baddies in the world, or at the very least to our frenemies. So a little context, when Biden was president, he put together a very comprehensive and in fact very restrictive plan around selling these chips to countries around the world. And Republicans were squawking. It was like going to the zoo, and they're like, hey, Biden, you're not doing enough. You're not protecting our national security. Oh my goodness, you're too old. And Biden was like, oh no, I'm putting together a really robust plan because I don't trust these people in other parts of the world. Fast forward to Donald Trump coming into the White House, and he's selling these things like you sell Snickers on the corner. So in May, he went to the Middle East and he sold our chips to UAE and to Saudis. Okay. And then a couple months later, there was some announcement that the Saudis had invested about $2 billion into a crypto company run by Jared Kushner and the Trumps. And then a couple months later, this deal is announced about these chips going to Saudi Arabia. And just recently, he announced another deal, Donald Trump that is, about chips going to China. Now, let's also remember that in January, when this president had his inauguration, who was sitting on the stage with him? All of these AI tech companies. And their goal is to design and sell their chips. Their goals are not to protect our national security. They may say they care about that and don't want to do bad things, but their number one goal is to be a computing, chip designing, chip making superpower. And whoever buys their chips, buys them. So we have a president who was essentially selling our most powerful, most prized asset, these chips that we design, to countries that are out to get us. Hey, Ben, for a fee, Trump is getting a commission on selling away our national security.
So the question then is, well, are we getting anything in return? I mean, he says we're going to get 25% in the social media post. He said we're going to be getting 25% sign. So it's unclear what he's even talking to 25% of what, but you even see what China did was not say, oh, yes, thank you, flood the market with your chips. They smartly said, great, we'll take your technology, but we've got our own companies that are competing with you. One of them is called Huawei, and they were expecting maybe 2028, 2030 to roll it out. But great, this will supercharge. So we'll take some of them. We'll take, you want us to pay you $25% sign? Okay, we'll buy 5 of them,
Yeah.
and then we'll manufacture our own and
Yeah.
checkmate. And it just seems so. So what's happening?
Yeah. So I feel like, it's the morning after and you wake up and there's some dollars on the table and maybe you got a kiss. I think that's all we've gotten. We have sold China the second most powerful chip around. So this is not generic brand, okay? This is like name brand chips. We've come up with a deal. Was a deal. The deal is not necessarily transparent. Of course, these Republicans are now silent. There have been no public briefings on these deals, the terms of the deals, the consequences for violating the deals, okay? So we have sold them our second most powerful chip. We have very vague assurances, and there are no consequences if they do something bad. And there have been reports, intelligence reports, that when the UAE got some of our chips, that they actually gave them to China, and China was using them to build super missiles. Okay, so this is bad. And what we've done is we haven't even sold them to US companies that are in those countries. We're actually selling these chips directly to the countries. So like, And then the United States actually does have kind of like an auditing agency that monitors where these chips go, but it's under-resourced. And we don't have enough money, because we're not getting it from Donald Trump, to make sure that we have enough people scouring the world to make sure that our chips don't go into bad hands. So we are essentially like taking the word of our haters and frenemies that they're not going to use our chips against us. Now, real questions. Who's getting the 25%? Is it going to build the rest of this ballroom? Is it going into the pocket of some like trust fund owned by Trump? Is it going to feed hungry children who didn't get SNAP benefits during the shutdown? Like, just tell us. But there's no information. And when all of this came out, there was a New York Times report that came out that said, hey, 5 alarms, shady, corrupt president. I authored a bill that said, let's investigate this, because you cannot have a quid pro quo. And I also authored a bill that said, no 25% commission, no fee for sale on our national security. And you know what happened? No Republicans supported either of those bills. So when you hear a Republican talk about we need to be tough on China, I'm not going to tell you to slap them in the face, but I am going to say you should give them like a Kash Patel crazy look in the eye and be like, you're shady and you're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Look, when the president of Taiwan needed to temporarily use U.S. airspace on a trip to Central America, the U.S. under the Trump regime denied the guy the ability to even fly through the airspace because Xi Jinping called and said, can't use your airspace. So, and to me, that was a test that Xi Jinping was saying, how much can I push? Got it. I own you. I control you with soybeans and rare earth elements. And it's not like those two things didn't exist under former President Biden. Biden just had a deck of cards, which is America had its relationships with Europe and Canada and Australia and the rest of the world. And we put on, and Japan, and we put on, and South Korea. And when China would do X, US would, all right, let's bring in South Korea and Japan and have a trilateral, and then we'll make our move. So like we were doing things to check that. And with Trump, it's like, all right, what Xi Jinping want me to do? And Trump seems so thirsty, like he needs this meeting with Xi Jinping in China so badly. And Xi Jinping's like knows, like, man, you want me really badly.
I know.
It's weird.
It's like watching some very dysfunctional romantic relationship, and you're like, everyone just needs to get out of it. So when I talked about like world domination, I'm serious. China has been thirsty for Taiwan for a really long time. And so we've had like a little arrangement with Australia and Japan, to protect the waters, to protect Taiwan. And so when China gets like funky, we've all raised up. So now, to your point, China is still thirsty for Taiwan and trying to take it. And Japan is like, yo, what will happen to our agreement, the United States? And Donald Trump is like, well, I hate to tell you, but I'm getting punked. So Republicans are getting punked by Donald Trump, okay? And he has no respect for them. And China is punking Trump. And China has no respect for Trump. And then remember, China is friendly with Russia. Then we got all frosty with India. So now Modi in India is like, okay, boo, I'm going to take all of my people and my tech savvy, and I'm going to go kick it with China and Russia. And the three of us are going to punk you, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is like, okay, but I want to be friends with you all because you all are like autocratic dictators. So I'll sell you my chips and I'll call my friends and tell them, just get slapped in the face when they come for you because I'm afraid of Xi. So it's like, and you're like, okay, where are the women in all this? Because women ain't going to get punked. We're going to tell you, you better sit down. Like if that happened to me and I was president, I would be like, oh no, booze. I'm not selling you the chips. I'm not giving you our national security. I'm not giving you my people's data. I'm not allowing you to create a supercomputer that will take over the world. And I'm not going to let you punk my friends. Donald Trump is not doing any of that for us.
And then who does Trump bring into the Oval Office? Asim Munir, the chief of staff of Pakistan's military, who basically runs Pakistan. Why? Because Pakistan gave money to the World Liberty Financial crypto company of Donald Trump and his family. So we gave the extra FU to India so that the Pakistan crypto, whatever, they never even had a crypto. They created a crypto fund to put it in World Liberty Financial. And then Trump does the thing with Asim Munir, and Munir goes, yes, Donald, you were the one who stopped the India-Pakistan war. You did it. So Trump's like, I did it. And then Modi's like, screw you. You didn't do it. We did it. You didn't even have a conversation. And you just look stupid to pretend that you had anything to do with this, at all. And by the way, when we do these fake, with Trump's fake peace deal crap like that, China and Malaysia know that Donald Trump had nothing to do with Cambodia and Thailand, and that Trump swooped in. And so we just look like a stupid, weak person. And then when it falls apart, he looks stupid when he takes credit for it. And China and Malaysia are like, all right, let's just let that fall apart so we can then blame it on him. And then he looks doubly weak. It's just like it's a humiliation ritual everywhere. And Congresswoman, no one in our corporate media talks about this, but this is the most important stuff that's screwing America for generations to come. And it's happening every day and it gets zero attention. I'll give you the final where you and I could talk 10 hours.
I know we can't. Well, I don't like getting played. So that's my thing. Don't play me. And the United States right now is getting played because you have a weak president who is much more interested in being applauded and lauded than he is in doing the work that a president should do to protect this country. So we have folks who come here from all around the world who say, I really believe in the values of the United States and I want to help you be innovative. I want to help you create things. Those folks no longer feel connected to our country because of what Donald Trump is doing. So that brain power, that innovation, the people who make computers, who come up with ideas for movies, all of these fascinating things, who are professors and lecturers, they're going to these other countries because these other countries say, I now have Donald Trump under the thumb of my hand. We do not talk, and corporate media does not talk enough about the world and what's happening globally and how these decisions impact us. You have a president who is selling your data, your national security, to countries that want to do us harm. And in exchange, he is getting money. And we don't know where that money is going. So tell us, just tell the American people, and let's connect the dots. Because if we are here with an isolationist policy only thinking about what's happening in America. And by the way, what's happening in America? ICE raids, not giving farmers the money that they're due, taking away our healthcare, dismantling our education, making us stupider, making us poorer, making us sicker. If we're isolated and just focusing on all of that, and all of the countries around the world are either working together to stop us from hurting them, or they're working together to destroy us the rest of the way, then we're screwed. And all I'm saying, Ben, is thank you for talking about this so that we can help the American people see that we're getting screwed from the left. Well, not from the left and the right, but we're getting screwed from both sides of people who no longer want to be our friends and enemies that we have made stronger.
Thanks for joining us. We'll have you back. We got to chat more about this. Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager-Dove, we appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.